Hey there, community bankers. Welcome back to the Correspondent podcast from Independent Correspondent Bankers Bank. I'm your host, Madison Kaplinger, Marketing Specialist for ICBB. Everyone loves a good story, right? Whether it's in a book or a movie or a story told around a campfire. But how can storytelling help banks break down intimidating finance topics for their customers and their communities? I explored this topic with Emily Schwartz, music educator turned bank marketer. She's the director of financial education at MidFirst Bank, which is based in Oklahoma City, as well as an instructor at the ABA's Bank Marketing School and a highly sought after keynote speaker. Please welcome Emily to the podcast.
Okay.
Hey there, community bankers. I am here with Emily Schwartz, who is the director of financial education at MidFirst Bank. How are you doing today, Emily?
I am doing so well, Madison. Thanks for having me.
No, thanks for coming on. Now, we met when I went to bank marketing school through the ABA in 2024. You were an instructor, correct?
Let's see. Was I an instructor that year? Not yet. I was on the board, the advisory board.
That's right.
So we have a bunch of bankers, bank marketers on the advisory board who coordinate the faculty and everything. And then starting last year, I've been teaching the content marketing course. So
Oh,
they just keep asking me back. I don't know.
the content marketing is one of my personal favorites.
Mine too.
Yeah, so I'll give a little plug if any bank marketers are listening. The bank marketing school through the ABA was definitely worth my time, and I think it'll be yours too. But Emily, you've had a really interesting and a really impressive career. So you're the director of financial education at MidFirst Bank. You're a fellow CFMP,
Right.
but your background is in music education, which I thought was so interesting. Can you tell me how you got from music ed to bank marketing?
Yeah, and I love when people ask this question, Madison. So thank you so much. There is a ton of overlap between music and financial education, more than anybody would think. But the short answer to your question is I absolutely poured my heart and soul into music teaching for years and burned out quickly. As you do when you pour your heart and soul into something, sometimes I went back to get my PhD to teach college. I thought, hey, maybe college is the next step, right? Maybe that's the next step for me. I'll go be a college professor. And midway through that, I ran across this really intriguing job posting. And you know how you just get a feeling like this is going to be something. And that's what I thought about MidFirst's job posting. They were looking for someone to grow their financial education program in Arizona, which at the time was a newer market for them because MidFirst is based in Oklahoma City. And I had always had this kind of side passion for finances. And I just thought, what the heck? Let's see what this is all about. Maybe this is another way to channel my passion for messaging and teaching, and the rest is history, as they say. But I will tell you that I love when people go, "Oh, music and financial education. You know, what's the relation there?" Having taught both, they are so similar. Music and money are really, really similar. They're well, because think about it. They're both things that everybody's familiar with, right? Everybody listens to music, everybody spends money, but they both contain this higher level structure that feels super inaccessible to people. Do you know what I'm saying? Like people listen to music, and if you're not a musician, you think like, "Oh, I could never do that. How do people do that?" People, when they have money questions, they think, "I could never do that." And so I think that's the connection, right? Is I have that passion for breaking that down for people. I spent the first part of my career taking a program of what, 60 10-year-olds playing 8 different musical instruments and going, hey, music. So it's this thing. It's broken into beats. It has these clusters of tones at different intervals. We organize them into things called keys. Like, that's really hard for a 10-year-old. Are you kidding me? But then you look at adults with money questions, and it's a lot of similar things. Like if you don't have a bird's eye view of your finances, of the money coming in, the money coming out, it feels so intimidating and it feels so like, well, I can never do this. And of course you can. Like, of course you can. You just kind of need that little push, the stepping stones. And that's what I'm really happy and passionate about providing.
That is so interesting. So I'm also a musician outside of work, and I never thought of it that way, but it makes so much sense.
Doesn't it? I mean, because it's so
Yeah.
surely you've encountered people who go, "Oh, you're a musician? Oh, Madison, I just don't have that talent. I'm not musical." And
Oh
you're like,
yeah.
"What are you
Yeah, yeah.
talking about?" You're like, shut up. Of course you could be musical. No one's taught you. Let's sit down.
Right.
Let's learn.
Yeah, it's like it's not as hard as you're making it, and it's, I think of money the same way too, actually, now that you put it that way. Um, yeah, so that's so interesting. And not a lot of banks, I noticed when I saw your job title, have an entire department dedicated to financial education. And you mentioned before we started recording, your Money Moments background is kind of the brand for your education
Mhm.
program in the schools. So tell us a little bit about what you do and what kind of results you've seen from your work.
Yeah, of course. So we are very fortunate. I will start off by saying that, I've got a lot of peers in bank marketing, that I meet at bank marketing school and bank marketing conference and all these things. And they all say the same thing. They're like, wait, you have a whole department? That's incredible. It's another thing on my plate. And so I get it. I hear you. It's a great place to be in. Basically what we do is we've got six of us who serve all of MidFirst's markets. So we're based in Oklahoma City, but we also have big markets in Arizona, Colorado, California, Texas, Utah, and Nevada. So lots of places. Okay, we're a $42 billion bank. Um, so most of what we do is personal and virtual workshops. So a lot of it is like the teaching model live. Hey, we're going to either jump on a Zoom or we're going to go into your classroom or into your business. It's not just kids, it's adults. Um, Through those types of interactions, we reach about 30,000 people a year through almost 800 of those workshops. So it's a lot. It is a lot of that kind of thing. But it's not just that. We also do the on-demand content. We've got videos and blogs and social content and things. Another special program that we have is our partnership with the University of Oklahoma, where we offer one-on-one personalized money coaching to the students there. So we have a center like in the middle of campus, or we've got an office in the Student Financial Center. It's really great, and we offer that one-on-one model of financial coaching. So lots of different ways that we do it, and yeah, seeing so many results. It's really incredible the impact that we're able to make on the community through these kinds of initiatives.
That's so awesome and so needed. The main complaint I hear from people is like, no one taught us this stuff in school about budgeting and taxes and all that kind of stuff. And there's such a need for it. And I think banks and particularly community banks are so well poised to meet that need in their communities. But we've talked a little bit about marketing, we've talked about content marketing, and I think you'd probably agree, all good marketing is just storytelling.
Yes,
Um, it's just
absolutely.
effective storytelling. And you give a talk about financial storytelling.
Mhm.
So, in a nutshell, what is financial storytelling?
Financial storytelling is just taking financial information and putting a narrative around it. It's finding the meaning. I think that unfortunately storytelling has become almost a buzzword. And I don't mean that in a negative sense. I'm glad it's getting the attention. But I think when people hear storytelling, they think like, "Well, once upon a time, there was a lady who lived in Kansas and had red sparkly shoes." You know what I mean? It's like yeah, that's a story. But all it is it's giving meaning to numbers. I mean, okay, can you imagine, Madison, being a kindergarten student on the rug? You know the one, right? You know the rug. Can you imagine if your kindergarten teacher brought out an Excel sheet on porridge consumption and was like, "Here you go, children." Like, that's ridiculous. We want to be read the story of Goldilocks and the Three Bears. And the problem is that as we get older, we view storytelling as, "Oh, that's naive, that's juvenile." Like, no, we're all still the kids on the rug. I'm sorry, but like we are. We just got taller. We're humans and humans connect with stories, and really good marketers and really good communicators recognize that and bring the meaning to the numbers.
Absolutely. I taught a digital marketing course at my alma mater last year, and one of the things I did with my students was the story brand framework. I
Yeah,
don't know if you're familiar. Yeah,
I
yeah.
am.
Yeah, creating brand stories essentially. And I think you're right. We are all basically just tall kindergartners who like to be told stories instead of having numbers read to us. So I wonder why stories resonate more than, numbers and disclosures when we're talking about financial education. And I think it has to do with I'd like to hear your thoughts, but I think it has to do with making meaning. You can show someone a sheet full of numbers and they'll still walk away thinking like, okay, why should I care? Like, why should this matter to me? But, what do you think?
No, I do think that's absolutely right. I think it's the why should I care? Um, Storytelling is not so much about making it easier to understand. I think that yes, that's a byproduct, which is great, but it's providing the so what. It's giving the meaning making. People always say, "Oh, be a storyteller." Yeah, it's almost like you're a tour guide, though, right? I don't know if you've ever been on a bus tour and it's packed and there's a lot of things passing by and you don't know what to look at, but the tour guide is the one who's kind of shining the flashlight and saying, "Oh, hey, you know what's really important? Look out your left side right now. Here's this thing to look at." That's kind of what storytelling is. It's directing attention in an order that makes sense and provides some meaning. And it's not that people can't figure it out without it, but oh my gosh, we're all so overwhelmed with all these inputs that we're all trying to make sense of all the time. Wouldn't you want a guide being your dot connector and helping you see it and make it easy? Make it easy for your audience. Why would you make your audience work harder than they need to? Is what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. If you make that's a thing I've learned as a marketer, also as, a teacher, the connector of everything is like you cannot make people work too hard to get their information or,
It,
because they have
absolutely
other
true.
things to spend their energy on for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's great that you have, this whole department dedicated to financial education. A lot of our banks are quite a bit smaller than yours, obviously. They're, more in the 2 billion and under range. So they might not have like these big programs, but I mean, a lot of them are in the schools providing financial education. And of course, I think this comes into play just talking to customers as well and kind of serving as an authoritative guide for someone buying their first home or opening their first savings account or, looking into investment retirement account options and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, how can banks use storytelling to explain these really complex, to your earlier point, intimidating financial concepts like credit, interest, cash flow, whatever, without oversimplifying too much?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And it is a really big concern that people have is like, oh, I don't want to oversimplify. And I push back a little bit when people come to me with that and say, what are you really trying to avoid? Because sometimes when we're afraid of oversimplifying, it's because we don't want our audience to think that we think they're stupid, right? But I think if we're really honest with ourselves, part of it also is that we don't want our audience to think we're stupid, right? Because it's like, oh, well, they're talking too simply. What they couldn't possibly know anything. And I get it. Like it's when the explanation that you're giving is complex, you kind of have jargon to hide behind. It can kind of hide a bad explanation. But when you are simplifying something, you are so exposed. If your metaphor doesn't work, it doesn't work. There's nothing to hide behind. So it's a little vulnerable to be simple. But I'm saying it's not something we should be afraid of. If you are looking to how to explain something simply, I would tell you, you just need to keep zooming out layers and get to what is the core thing that you're trying to get across. Get out of the details, get out of the weeds for a second. What's the core idea that you're trying to get across? So you mentioned a couple different ones. Let's look at credit, for example. Okay, there's a lot of directions you could teach somebody something about credit. You could teach them how to raise their credit score so they can buy a house. You could teach them, about all the different ways FICO can put your credit score together, and you could show them the pie chart that we all use, right? But what's the core? The core is, hey, person, you are trying to prove to your lender that you're going to pay your thing back. Your credit score, it's the evidence. You're bringing the receipts, quite literally, right? That's the core of this idea. And everything else is built around that. So you teach that first. That's what credit is. It's bringing the evidence that you've collected of your good behavior. Okay, so then the next layer, okay, now we can talk about which behaviors are they looking at specifically and how much are they weighted and what does it mean in terms of your ability to get approved for a loan. Like, but all of those are layers around the core. And if we kind of re-simplify or if we reframe simplifying as that, it's not about dumbing it down. Oh my gosh, people who know me well know that's the quickest way to get me to get irritated in a meeting is to use, oh, I got to dumb it down. No, you don't. You got to zoom out. You got to zoom out, find the core of what it is you're talking about, and then wrap it in as many or few layers as you want beyond that.
Calling all women in community banking. Join us on Friday, April 24th at Eastern Kentucky University for Ladies Link. This event will be a day of leadership lessons, camaraderie, and fun that you won't want to miss. And we'll end the day with a women in banking panel full of faces you may recognize. Register now at the link in the show notes. Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a secondary, like another issue I see there, like you and I, we've, talked about our love for content marketing and
Yeah.
creating, when I create content about a product, I see these kind of competing instincts between, personnel that are making them together. So, the marketing instinct is, to kind of zoom out, tell a story, and then you get like operations and compliance involved, and they tend to want to include all the details and every disclosure a regulator might possibly want to see. And it's like, and I'm not just, my operations and compliance people are wonderful and I love working with them, but this is also something I hear from other bankers as well, these competing instincts, and it's almost like a form of FOMO, I think,
Yeah.
for operations and compliance. Just want to include all the details. So, I mean, do you have uh any advice for, balancing those instincts out for banking teams?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think it's a unique problem. I think you come across these kinds of issues in any industry trying to do anything. You have people with competing priorities and things in their head that are in the front of their head, and they feel at the surface like they're competing, but once you dig into it a little bit more and go, okay, why are you saying it this way though? Like, I'm coming to you with this idea and with this mindset, but you're not telling me your thing to be a buzzkill. You're telling me this for a reason. So what's the reason behind your point of view, what you're trying to do here? And then once you kind of find the reason that they're saying, oh, well, we're trying to keep the bank safe. We're trying to keep the bank out of trouble. We're trying to make sure we're checking these boxes. Like, okay. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about why we're coming to the table. And then it's so much easier to find a solution that works for everybody. Not just for the marketing operations compliance, like you just said, but really anytime there's cross-departmental work, any kind of, people coming together who don't work in the same sandbox every day, um, you run into that. But again, storytelling is such a great answer for that because everybody, I don't care what your job title is, everybody can get on board with communicating meaning, communicating the same the so what. That is something everybody can agree on. And when that's the focus of the meeting, then the how, okay, well, you'll figure it out. But we find that common ground in the storytelling, is what I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I can see, spaces for, storytelling in, every part of bank marketing and communication from, what's the story of the brand? What's the story of what this product can do for you? And, financial education, what you do every day. Is there anywhere that you see banks missing opportunities to tell better stories?
Yes. And I I almost hate to say that because I don't want the people listening to be like, "Oh no, I'm failing." It's just any customer communication, any touch point is a storytelling opportunity. And remember, storytelling is not once upon a time there was a lady named Emily and she lived in Arizona, right? That's not, it doesn't have to be that. It's just finding meaning. So you mentioned the product thing. I mean, are you explaining a product or are you telling me a story about its outcomes? Are you sending a low balance alert or are you telling me what I should do with that information or what I could do next with that information? I mean, like little anything, like just get a big old whiteboard. Don't we all love whiteboard meetings? And just put all the customer touch points up there. And like, where can we be finding points to communicate meeting or meaning here, and add that little storytelling element? I think that's the small little storytelling confetti that we can sprinkle on everything without making it be some big, huge initiative.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And some of what you said is storytelling to persuade, right?
Yep.
Um, yeah, you should open this account, you should do this thing. But of course, when we're talking about, people and their money situations, I think you have to handle that with some care. So how do you use storytelling responsibly without it crossing the line into manipulation?
Madison, that is such a delicious question, and I love it so much because it's so responsible. It recognizes the power that storytelling has, and you are absolutely right. And look, of course, we're trying to persuade. Of course, we're trying to nudge a customer in a direction, but there's a line. You have to do it responsibly. It's about messaging, it's guidance, it's education. You can guide someone to a choice by by educating them, by showing them the options. Manipulation is you're shaming them, you're pushing them, you're making them feel icky about, like, there's a lot of pressure about what they have to do, and we don't ever want to do that to a customer. We want to educate. Like, sometimes I think it's easier to talk about this outside of banking because we all know what manipulation looks like, in our lives. So right now in the Schwartz house, our current argument is whether we should kill off all the grass in our backyard and replace it with artificial turf. Okay. I am team artificial turf. So that's where I'm at. Now, if I'm trying to convince my husband to get artificial turf back there, what am I doing? I'm showing examples and stories of water saving stats, of maintenance saving, statistics. I'm looking at testimonials of people who have made this switch and blah, blah, blah. What I'm not doing is going, "Oh, well, I guess you just don't care about the environment. Look at all if you loved me, we'd have artificial turf in the back." That's manipulation, right? That's manipulation. So if you're reading through your messaging and it kind of sounds like Emily trying to manipulate Dan Schwartz into thinking that the path to happiness is lined with artificial grass, then that ain't it. That's not it. We know manipulation when we see it. So just put your honest lenses on and look at it and be like, is this presenting facts and helping someone, or is this trying to put pressure on someone to take an action that they feel like they don't have a choice in? That's what you're doing.
Yeah. Is this effective communication or a UDAP violation?
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I also think about, the different stories for different audiences because, a community bank, you're serving a whole community and there are a lot of different needs and a lot of different audiences with that community from people starting a business, people buying their first home, people, looking to retire. So how should financial stories change depending on the audience, or do you think it's more universal than that?
It depends on your story. If you're telling your brand story, your founding story, that's something that you're kind of making to everybody. It's a story about you. You're the hero of the story. But a lot of times, the bank, your brand, you, whoever, you're not the hero of the story. The person that you're speaking to is the hero of their story. And for that, it needs to be different because everybody's solving a different problem. A first-time home buyer might not even know what their problem is. I encounter that a lot in financial education, especially. Sometimes I view our department as problem finders. People come to us, they don't know what their problem is. They're like, I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, I feel like I'm not doing something right, but I don't really know what the thing is. Help me find the problem. Okay, well, that's a different type of story and messaging than to maybe a small business owner who might know exactly what their problem is. It's funding. They need more of it. And so, like, talk to me about that. Or, my payment processing just isn't working. Okay, well, let's talk about that. It depends on what problem you're solving. I would go further to say a lot of pushback I hear on storytelling is that every story has to apply to everybody. We know inherently that's not true, but then when push comes to shove and have to press go on our story, we always feel a little uncomfortable that, like, oh, but this might not apply to everyone. Sometimes when a message is for everyone, it's for nobody. A small business owner is going to perceive different information than a large business owner, right? A college student is going to have different problems than a first time home buyer who's 35 years old, right? So um, it's okay to give specific information to specific problems.
Yeah, I like that you mentioned sometimes if you're talking to everyone, you're talking to no one because that's a drum that I beat a little bit, and yeah, something I believe very deeply when it comes to marketing. And kind of to that point, one of the audiences that banks may be trying to communicate with might be a little younger. Community banks, especially, they see this great wealth transfer coming and they're like, how can I attract some of the younger customers that are going to be inheriting some of my older customers wealth, or maybe underserved audiences, and that can look like a lot of different things depending on where you are. Um, but I think we as institutions will try to speak their language, and it doesn't always come across the way we want it to. So
What?
yeah, yeah. So what's the biggest mistake you see institutions making when trying to speak the language of their younger audiences or their underserved audiences?
Well, you just hit it exactly on the head. So, in my academia days, we would call this the creepy treehouse effect. When you're trying people, but you're doing it by trying to be them, and you're like, "Hey, look, I'm on social media like you, and I'm just speaking like you," and it just comes off as weird. And they're like, "What is this person doing?" Young people don't need to see you as a fellow young person. They want to be heard, especially this generation. The people right now, like 25 plus or minus 25 right now, that I'm speaking to in the community, I mean, man, they are fierce. Don't be talking down to them, okay? They are savvy. They know what they want. They want information. They are not afraid to ask for it. They just want someone to listen to them and to be heard. So that's kind of my advice on the younger generation thing. Don't write them off. They want to know. They're there. Listen to them. Make sure that they know that you're listening to them, um, and respond to the things they care about. They're really cool. I mean, I am not concerned about the future at all. That might be a hot take. I don't know. Some of these people that I'm speaking to on college campuses and young in the workforce, I'm just like, man, can't wait to see what you go do. This is going to be incredible.
Yeah, and I mean that's nice to hear too. But yeah, I agree. I think the BS meter for young people is super, super high, and they can
Yes.
smell inauthenticity a mile away.
Yep.
And it's like the most grievous sin that they're just like immediately no,
Yep.
you know, no more of this. Stop saying cap, you're 45. Like
Could you please put that on a t-shirt and sell it? I would buy that. That's hilarious.
that, yeah, that can be Bankers Bank's next t-shirt, and no one will understand where it came from if they don't listen to the podcast.
Madison, if you don't know this about me, I am all about rogue merchandise. That is kind of my passion. So let's do it.
Amazing. Yes. But yeah, I like what you said about, them just wanting to be heard. And ultimately, I think that's what every demographic wants. They just want to be they heard. They want to know that their concerns are being taken seriously. And that's the fear, right? I think when walking into an interaction with, a banker or someone that you perceive as being intimidating or knowing more than you, is like your concerns aren't going to be heard. I mean,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay. So I have one last question that's kind
Okay.
of overarching to the whole conversation. But if a community bank wanted to start using financial storytelling tomorrow, where should they begin?
That's a great question. And I'm so glad you asked it because that's the whole point, isn't it? I mean, we don't have these podcasts just for funsies, we have them to go do it. So if that's you right now, I would say resist the urge to think that it's some huge thing. This is not a rebrand. This is not a new program. This is not something that's going to require 27 meetings. I think we sometimes do that. We get in our heads about it and think it has to be some big thing. It could be a little thing. It could be a bunch of little things. It could be kind of what we said earlier, the whiteboard, right? All the customer touch points. We're not going to do all of them. We're going to pick one. We're going to pick one where maybe we aren't communicating meaning well enough, and we're going to see where we can start doing that. I know that it's sometimes very FOMO-y, as you said, to hear, oh, well, here's someone who's this bank, MidFirst has this huge program who's doing this really well and blah blah blah. Yeah, everybody does stuff differently. We're all different banks, we're all different things. We all have our strengths. And so, yeah, you're not going to be us, you're going to be you. What do you do really well? I'm sure it's something everybody has their thing that like, oh, you know what we do really well in the community? This. Cool. Start there. Start with that communication and see where you can turn that into meaning making for the customer. Start with little things and build from there. It works best when it shows up in real, authentic things that you're already doing.
I love that because it feels so much more doable and so much more approachable, I think, for our banks than if it were a big like rebrand level project. Just start with one thing or a bunch of little things.
Yeah, and you learn, honestly, you learn from doing it that way too. You learn what resonates with people, what doesn't. Maybe your first idea is a total failure and it just does not resonate with customers. Okay, I mean, we've had plenty of those that though we tried, we're like, nope, that ain't it. Let's try another thing. And that's just that's part of it. That's part of the dialogue of marketing is, listening to customer need and helping them solve their problems, which is what we're all doing after all.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Emily, thank you so much for, joining us on this podcast and sharing your financial storytelling wisdom. I think our customer banks are going to get a lot out of this, and I think it's something that they can go implement tomorrow. So I'm really excited to share this one with our customer banks.
Thank you. I'm hopeful that they can do little tiny pieces. Go tell your stories.
Thank you for listening to the Correspondent podcast from Independent Correspondent Bankers Bank. We hope you've heard something that you can take back to your community bank. Be sure to follow us wherever you get your podcasts. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, leave us a rating and review, or on Spotify, turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. See you next time, community bankers.